Welcome back to the Tasting Room, where we are now 6 episodes old.
We are 2 hands.
2 hand. Last week we were 1 hand.
Now we're 2.
A full hand. Now we are a full hand and a baby hand.
That's right. 5 and 1.
Katie Godoy is the guest this week. She is everything at American Solera, except for master brewer, I guess we could say. But she runs front of house.
I bet she could brew.
I mean, probably could. She runs front of house events, does some distribution stuff. I mean,
is there anything that she doesn't do?
No, not really. And it's a really cool perspective because not only does she do all of those things for a really popular national and international brewery, but she's not from Oklahoma or even from Tulsa or even Oklahoma. Right. Is the right way to say that. From St. Louis. So the outsider's perspective of what Tulsa was versus what she thought it was versus what it was once she got here. It was just a really cool conversation.
Yeah, and she's got her story. You should ask her or have a conversation about her life in Spain. It's a crazy ordeal, and she lived in Spain for 5 years.
I get really jealous when I hear that because I almost moved to Barcelona.
Man,
Barcelona.
Yeah, and her perspective of the world is really wide and very developed. It's a very fun conversation with her.
It was. You want to just get to it?
Yeah.
All right. Katie Godoy after the break.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm John. I'm one of the partners here at Grassfire Creative. We are a production company. We do animation, video production, live production, anything you need to creatively tell both your story and your business's story. Along with the content that we create, we also provide the strategy behind how to get it in front of the eyeballs that matter to you. We're located right in the middle of the United States in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so no matter where you are, we're just a short flight away. Bottom line is we are very excited to both meet you and tell your business's story. Please do reach out to us one of the ways below via email or phone number, and check out more about us at our website, grassfirecreative.com.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Tasting Room. Today, we've got a wonderful person and a friend here sitting next to me. Her name is Katie Godoy from American Solera.
Hello.
What's going on, friend?
Oh, happy to be here.
It's a rockin' tie-dye shirt.
Thank you. I didn't tie-dye this myself, but...
Was that not from the...
No.
Okay.
A project I never want to revisit again. That was pretty labor-intensive on preparation, but it ended up being really fun, super hands-on, and everybody loved it, but the first and last time we'll ever do mass
I also have to give you credit.
tie-dye.
So, Trevor showed up and brought it with the food and, the hot plate and searing stuff and the raw bar and everything that he brought.
That's cool.
You brought... half a liquor store.
Yeah, I
worth of beer.
I took the assignment really seriously, and I was having trouble picking just one, and then here we are.
I love it.
I do too. You want to get started with questions while I pour some bourbon?
Sure, absolutely.
I don't know why I brought this time. So it's called Old Tub, which I've been looking for out of Kentucky. It's from, here's what I like. When places like Jack and Jim Beam, because this is James B. Beam Distilling Company, but when they put something out that's not their normal name, I usually like it better than the regular Jack or the regular Jim or whatever. So I haven't had this before. So it'll be a maiden voyage for all of us.
How fun.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, I guess I get to go first.
Sure.
I just want to know your perspective and your story of how you got into the craft beer scene and your perspective of the differences of where you've come from and where you are now.
Yeah, so I sort of feel like my journey into craft beer was not one that was planned, really. I think it's one of those things where you just sort of don't stop doing something you find that you're good at and that you have a passion for, and then you just keep pursuing it. So, the day after I turned 16, I got a job at St. Louis Country Club. I was both a buffet girl on Sunday nights and worked in the snack bar. So that was my front of house, back of house, because I was doing all the food prep and everything for them. And then worked in a couple barbecue restaurants, ended up just getting sort of server job after server job, and then ended up, once I was in college at now Missouri State, was SMS, ended up managing a wine bar And then we opened up a sister.
Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Tell everybody where you're from.
Oh, I'm from St. Louis. Sorry,
There you go.
I'm from St. Louis, and ended up going to school in Springfield, Missouri, and then was managing a wine bar at the time. We ended up opening a sister bar down the street, an Irish pub called Finnegan's Wake, which in that moment opened with 35 draft lines, which was for the time a lot. And before people got really crazy with like 100, 150 lines, which now I have a totally different perspective on and think that that's usually always like too much.
Sure.
But in that moment, it was very cool and exciting to get to, pick all the drafts and figure out what was, what folks were going to enjoy, which was a sort of a weird time to do it because it was a college bar, it was an Irish pub. So certain things you have to have on: Harps, Middicks, Guinness, of course, but then also balancing budgets. Having Coors Light, we had just $5 pitchers, all day, every day, and so that was sort of my first beer bar management in that moment, and then I ended up moving to Spain, bartending there for a few years, coming back to St. Louis, and slowly ended up managing the first craft beer bar in St. Louis, and then going on to manage the entire restaurant group, which when I started, we had 4 concepts and under 100 employees. And when I left 5 years later, we had 11 concepts, 2 event spaces, and 350 employees.
Jeez.
Oh, my word.
So,
and tell us a little bit, you kind of slipped in that you went to another country there for a little bit.
Yeah.
So to go into that, my first question, how did that, because you lived there for
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Has that influenced how you manage?
Well, I would say
Do you get mad and speak in Spanish?
I used to at my ex-husband. Yeah. No, so I guess I don't know that it affects how I manage. I will say they're much more loosey-goosey there, and there were certainly things that I would not advise as a business owner to take on. Like, for example, we just had employees that were late every day because they were always looking for parking, and they were, but just It was a small town, like. Just leave 5 minutes earlier or walked. Yeah, of course. Or people would say, just pour me a little bit more. And I would say, well, I'd have to charge you for that, but I'm happy to. And, the owner would say, it's just a little bit more. And she would encourage me. She's like, just pour them. He just wants a little bit more. And I was like, yeah, but if everybody just wants a little bit more, right?
Next time I come into Solera,
Yeah,
can I just get a little bit more?
Just a little bit more?
So
Can I have the top
I would
off?
say
Yeah.
I would say it wasn't always maybe the way I would view it from an American perspective, but much more, I guess, customer focused. I mean, she did certainly, the owner of that bar, teach me a lot about multitasking and managing time and those kinds of things. So certainly a different style of bartending and working with people, but all in all, like a great experience still, for sure.
Right on.
I'll be honest with you before I ask you a question. I don't like this bourbon.
Oh.
Oh, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, man.
It's just very.
Sorry, old tub.
Yeah, it's just very bland. It's very bland to me. It doesn't have. It's 100 proof, and it definitely doesn't taste that.
No.
No,
There's
that's true.
no heat, which is a
No,
good
it's
thing.
not hot.
But there's also not a lot of flavor.
I feel like it's spicy in the way that like Jim Beam is spicy, kind of.
Yeah, I guess it does kind of remind me more of Beam than I was hoping it would.
Yeah.
Considering
I
it's
drank
made
too much
by
Beam.
Beam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In college, that was the
Right.
liquor of choice.
And everybody's palate may be different. You might love it, but for me, it's not. Compared to the other ones I brought, the group picks and the store picks and all that, this one doesn't.
I would say you're completely right that it's not the most complex whiskey that we've had today, but I kind of like its simplicity.
I mean, is it the Pilsner of the whiskeys that we've had?
Whoa,
There we go.
Easy.
Just
don't,
as far
don't,
as,
no,
like-
no hate to Pilsners,
No,
right?
I love Pilsners. Just
Yeah.
like the everyday drinker, the simple, you know what you're getting, everyday Pilsner.
Yeah, if I was going to drink a whiskey every single day, I'd probably be pulling this one most.
Interesting.
Oh.
Next week I have one I want you to try, and we'll see if I can beat that.
Right on.
So I'll ask you a question, Katie. So one of your many hats is being in charge.
Maybe I'm just a simple whiskey
but
drinker.
that's okay. That's not a bad thing. One of your many hats is doing all the events over at Solera. Okay, so this is more of a creative process question, and it's not. I realize it's not only your decision, but there's only so many like types of events that breweries can do, right? How do you think outside the box when it comes to creating events that people see and it grabs their attention because of the uniqueness of the event, not just the name?
I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. I don't really think I'm a very creative person. I do good in a group where everyone's sort of brainstorming, and then, you know, if someone has a good idea building off of that. I have a very hard time, me personally, of just coming up with creative stuff. I'm more a better executor. Luckily, Chase is very creative, and Matt and Erica, like, they're all coming up with great ideas or saying like, hey, we'd like to do this. And I'm like, let's make it happen. And then I can follow the steps to make that happen, but in an organized way, and assigning and delegating and those kinds of things. But like, as far as the creative process goes, that's really not usually my forte, to be quite honest.
I feel like that's one of my better questions. And I can, because I can ask you that too. How do you guys deal with that? Or how do you, I mean, are you going to pass the buck on to Lisa? Like, is that what we're about to do?
That's normally what I do.
But how do you guys try to get creative, and what's the process like with brainstorming different events that you can do?
Oh, goodness. One, you can't wear out your customers. You can't like throw an event. Like we just had our 4th anniversary party this last weekend. And with those I think you would agree, you can't necessarily throw big parties like that all the time. Yep. So we try to do at least one a quarter. And then we have like our sub parties, like the luau. And, you know, it's a little less high key. And so you got to time it out right. But coming up with ideas, I don't know. I think it's more or less.
Is it beer based for you guys? Yeah,
sometimes. But I would say more or less it comes out of drinking sessions of ideas coming out of the hat, and then actually being able to execute that, and that's where Lisa comes in.
And that's one thing.
Can herd cats really well.
Right. That's one thing you guys don't do, right, Katie? Is you don't base events like. I don't know how to phrase this right. Like
a round of beer.
Yeah, like if you have a stout coming out, it's not some sort of like event that plays off the name of the stout or something like that. I would say
we've done a couple. Like we had a beer called State Champs that had a silly ring, and we did a pep. You know, Chase was like, "What if we did a pep rally?"
There was a band and everything, wasn't there?
No, we tried to get a band to come out. We couldn't get anyone to come out. We tried to get cheerleaders to come out, both from like TU and some local high school. No dice. So we made a banner. My assistant Madison and I, we made a banner, and we had our staff run through it, and I made shitty programs. Like, it took a lot longer to make a bad program, make it, you know, using random fonts
make it
and
shitty,
putting in quotation marks where they definitely didn't belong, making a little coupon book in the back, and having like a fake roster for our staff. So yeah, I mean, we've done a couple, or we'll try to tie in elements for some of the beers. Like if we have a stout, maybe doing a milkshake version of that in the slushy machine, or incorporating some of the beer into a syrup to top, you know, to make a float out of, or whatever it is. So I think we do some of those. We just do so many releases, and I almost never know what's coming out until that Monday morning meeting. So it would be very hard, I think, for our business model to plan a lot of those, because they're just all so last minute, and there's just so many.
The last tangent of that question, or like a little tributary to it, is, have we gotten to the point where we feel like events are almost gimmicky? Ooh. To some extent.
Sure.
Because for both of you guys, like I feel like your beer and your reputation speaks for itself. So the need to have events probably is less. Right?
Well, and I think it's all changing, right? You know, is anyone getting out of bed for a Keep the Glass event? I mean, certainly not the way it was when it was 2008, right? I mean, not that you can't ever still do those.
But
The
shout out to our
CBAO is
mutual
doing
friend
one.
who still does every Tuesday.
Oh, they do?
You can take
oh,
the
bless
glass
them.
home. And
Okay.
this is one of them. Drink good fucking beer.
Oh, good. They're going to actually be here brewing
Oh,
with
that's
us next Thursday.
We'll have to try to get them on the
Yeah.
podcast. We'll see if we can
that'd be cool.
see if we can have time to do that. That'd
Oh,
be
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
But anyway, so you can continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh,
but yeah, you're right. Like those kind of gimmicky, like take the glass. Like it is an evolving.
and I will say, like, you know, my coworker Hagen really, really wanted to do a trivia night. I have done and managed a trivia night back in Springfield at that Irish pub with my best friend for 2 years. And I know how much work it is, and I know how much time goes into it and writing all the questions and the stress. But I mean, you get to build something from scratch. We have a great following. We had 92 people
There's
last
always a
3
lot
weeks.
of people there. Yeah.
So, you know, it's fun. And if it's fun for those folks, awesome. I've very recently stepped away as my job has changed a little bit
Oh,
from
you're no longer doing it?
No, from trivia. We had to cut from somewhere, and that was seemed maybe one of the places
fair.
where I was spending
That's
a
fair.
good amount of time that likely wasn't, you know, the best use of all of my time. So, but anyways, and I even think, you know, for me, I wouldn't personally go to a trivia night every week, but we have people who love it and want to go every week, and we get tons of compliments on it. And those types of things, I think, while they can be gimmicky, you know, we've made very successful. And if there's a market for it and demand, I mean, if we were playing to 15 people every week, we wouldn't do it. But
Fair.
Right.
if it's successful, I mean, great.
I think I think the
And I might have
gimmicky-
been mean by saying gimmicky. That might not have been the right word.
No.
but,
you're totally true. Like pint nights historically have kind of gone a little bit to the wayside. We do pint nights all the time, but I think that the reason that ours work and aren't necessarily super gimmicky is because Lisa's making a completely new glass every single time with new art. So
Yeah.
you've got to, there's now with events, like what you're saying is there has to be an extra fold to them now. There has to be some more definition of why people are going to come.
Yeah.
So like with trivia, we host trivia too. And I think it's just giving customers in our community a chance to just hang out and do something fun rather than like you could get really into it and whatnot and have, I don't know, teams and points and this, that, and the other. I think, do you guys do that?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, there's
awesome.
teams and points,
See,
yeah.
I actually have never played trivia
Okay.
other than maybe once. So
Yeah, they're
which
pretty
is kind of-
competitive with
yeah.
it, yeah.
No, yeah, and I love that, and
Yeah.
I think that's the extra fold that brings people around, and it's just kind of fun competition.
As opposed to like just coming and drinking, which is totally
Right.
fine too. But
Please
some
do
people
that. Spend your money at our
but
brewery.
some people
Yeah.
certainly don't understand that. We had our pest control guy, who was super nice older man, and he just could not understand what all the chairs were for. And he was just like, what people they surely don't just come here and drink beer. And I was like, yeah,
That's
they
actually
do.
our
That's
sole business model.
That's pretty much all they do. He was like, but what about what activities are there? Are there shows? And I was like, no shows.
It's like, how quickly
Just-
can you drink a beer so that you can go buy another one? That's the
they're just
game.
good
That's the
beers,
game.
hanging out, talking with friends.
Yeah.
Usually, I don't know.
Speaking of beer, you brought 82. So let's,
Yes.
before we ask the next question, pick one that you want to
Well,
sip.
so one of the questions that was posed, and I suppose this happens with every presenter or guest, was beer. Early beer for you that was like influential. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm from St. Louis.
Are we starting with that?
We have to start with Busch.
Okay.
Nice,
All right.
nice, light, easy drinking. We're not going to start with Sucks because that's going to hurt our palate. And we want to start with a nice light beer.
There we go.
The introductory beer. This is the big one.
Warm
so
our
we can
palates
share.
up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love this. Busch. There it is. Sound of the mountains.
Pass your glass?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So while you're pouring that, I guess I'll ask my
Yeah, go
second
ahead.
question. So
Thank you.
bringing your experience back to Tulsa, and I want to know, an out, because you're our first kind of transplant on the show, and I've always been curious what, from the outside looking in, because I'm born and raised Tulsa and have always been here. I've left many times but always come back. What is the perspective of an outsider coming in to Tulsa? Define what that looks like to you and how Tulsa feels to you.
Like from a beer perspective?
From a beer perspective,
or just
from,
when you were
from
thinking of
food
coming
perspective.
Here.
Yeah. So I guess I want to just really quickly wrap up St. Louis before I moved here. So after working at the restaurant group and that craft beer bar, the grass-fed burger restaurant that I managed, we had 35 lines, and we were committed to we opened in 2011. We were committed to making them all local beers, which in that moment in St. Louis in 2011, the only local beers that we could get were Boulevard, if you consider Kansas City local,
right,
and Schlafly, a local craft beers, excuse me. So when I first started, our lines were divided. Half were Boulevard, half were Schlafly. But in the same month that Range opened, Perennial, Civil Life, Four Hands, and Urban Chestnut all opened within that same month.
Oh, wow.
And so I really got to
That's
know.
a boom.
It was, it was really exciting. And so I got to know all of those business owners, and we got to have, everybody's launch when they first came to market. And so seeing, Perennial grow from one handle with Black Walnut Dunkel to 6, and Four Hands grow, and Civil Life grow, and all the different styles and identities that these breweries brought to the table really helped sort of hone what I was interested in, identifying what I like to drink, and, finding each brewery's different personality was, and then knowing the people from it was different than, the Avery that we were getting at the craft bar that I managed. And so anyway, so I got to know Phil and Emily Wymore of Perennial, and I worked for them and managed Perennial for 3.5 years before I moved here. From a transplant's perspective, I love Tulsa. I think Tulsa is so super cute. It is a tiny St. Louis, basically, both on the river, both with relatively smaller populations. Here, everything is 10 minutes away. In St. Louis, it's all 20 minutes away. I think maybe my biggest, I don't even want to say disappointment, because it's not Tulsa's fault, but there's a lack of diversity here in Tulsa, and that's, I would say, probably the biggest difference other than size. But there's so many amazing things that the city has to offer, as far as more live music than St. Louis has, I think, as far as per capita and just frequency, and really great quality of musicians too, where you can see an awesome band for free almost every night if you wanted to. And, amazing perks like the Gathering Place and the Riverside Trail, and all of that development's amazing. So from a citywide perspective, I love Tulsa. From the beer scene, it's a little bit different for me. I mean, Perennial, I think, is pretty well known across the United States. I managed really, really large releases there. I think the last Maman release that I had, now granted this is all pre-COVID, and I moved at a sort of weird time, just a few months before COVID started. Yeah. So I don't know that I've even really seen like the real Tulsa yet. But that being said, we had 1,000 people at that last Maman release, and Perennial's a bit out of the way. It's there's no other businesses really around it. You have to go there. And now working for Solera at 6th and Utica, in between two breweries that are have been around longer. No, well, I guess Cabin Boys wasn't around longer. Just we weren't in that location, longer, right? We weren't in that location yet, and so so we get a lot of walk-in traffic, folks who have never been to Solera before. People who have no idea what we do. Most of them look at our draft list and are completely lost. A lot of them ask for normal beer. And so that's sort of maybe the hard part, I think, about my job, is making sure that our staff's really educated, making sure that they can explain sort of buzzwords quickly without being condescending. I want everybody to be really proud of what we're doing, but I also don't want anyone to be too proud and make it unapproachable. I don't want beer to be wine, basically. I mean, I think it's changing. I think that landscape's changing as well. But so I guess from that perspective, it's more of an education component to my job and to for the staff, educating the customers, which is a different issue than I ever had when I was living in St. Louis, or at least with Perennial.
So let me follow up to what you answered with there for a second, because I feel like a lot of what you said about Tulsa has been learned since you've been here. What surprised you, or what was different based on what you thought Tulsa would be before you moved? And then you got here and it's like, oh, it's actually all of these things I just listed. Was there a stark contrast or no?
I don't really, the window of my decision to move here and actually moving here was pretty
you didn't have time
short.
to think about it.
I don't even know. I mean, I came down and I visited a handful of times, maybe 10 before I moved. So there wasn't a ton of I didn't really even have a ton of preconceived notions about what I thought it would be. I did sort of think Oklahoma. I was maybe concerned about
People ride horses to the brewery or something.
Yeah, maybe a little bit a slower pace, slower life pace. I was, I personally am pretty liberal, and I was just wondering, who my coworkers might be, who my neighbors might be, if there would be, a lot of disagreement. But I think honestly, politically, Missouri and Oklahoma's landscape is
pretty close,
similar. Not that Missouri's a big liberal state either, but so I don't know. I didn't have much of a preconceived notion. I just remember thinking, wow, the dive bars are really cool and everybody is really nice. Oh, I'll tell you the thing that I maybe enjoy the most about, I don't think this is local to Tulsa, but maybe to Oklahoma. I've never heard this before. People here say, appreciate you.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the cutest. And the first few times someone would say it, I really took it to heart too much. Probably. I was like, wow, oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah.
And it's a throwaway line for them.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Come on back now, you hear?
I thought that was, anyways, that's one of the cuter expressions that I picked up.
That's really cool.
Y'all, I picked up y'all pretty quick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You got to do that.
But I love it. Yeah.
I feel like since we have so much beer, before I ask the next question, let's pick two that we want to sip on at the same time. I'm trying to get through all of them.
Yeah. We've got a marathon.
So I
don't even have to.
I know you brought two Soleros.
Well, let's
for sure drink your beers.
Well, definitely. I was going to say, since we're drinking a light beer now, maybe we also have Solero, and then maybe we do the IPA side by side.
Perfect.
Okay.
And you don't have to pour them; we can just take them straight out of the can.
Oh,
so
sure.
tell us a little bit about Solero.
So Soleros are Modelo Rip.
I love this
Right
beer,
on.
by the way.
And just easy drinking. Corn.
Even with the gold cap.
Oh yeah, gold cap.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, just 5%.
Such a good beer.
Nice and light, really tasty.
And I love that it's crispy boy. That
Crispy
just cracks me up.
We just went. I don't know what the Coney is doing on there, but it looks great. It's a super cute label. We ended up having shaker pints, which is sort of like against everything that I was really against it. I was really against frozen shaker pints and a lime, but
So
it's gimmicky.
for people that don't know what that is, what's a shaker pint?
Oh, it's probably the worst beer glass in history, but essentially it's the very, very heavy sort of kind of triangular shaped, I guess, 16-ounce daily drinker that you would find at almost every bar. But it's just, as far as, aromas and that going, it's very, it just doesn't do any favors, I would say, generally.
Right. Am I up?
You're up.
I am. Yes, I am. So you mentioned how things kind of evolve or are evolving in the craft beer world and in regards to events and stuff, but I want to take that a step further. So, there's still the Solera memberships, that's still an active thing, but where do you see the evolution, and you're going to answer this too, of the
sure.
craft beer industry going, and how do you stay ahead of that curve?
I would have said
That's a big one. That's a whale.
Yeah.
Unpack that one.
I mean,
Good luck.
I think, I feel like our business model specifically, which if you're not familiar with Solero, we release 2 to 5 brand new beers every week, which is a record. Most folks cannot do that. That is not a
That's
sustainable.
such high output. Yeah.
It's a lot. And just big shout out, to our brewer, Matt and Chase, for cranking out labels and coming up with all sorts of creative ideas and having things be fresh and different constantly. So I do think that consumers want variety, but there's also folks that just do not understand that we don't have that beer. I think we've talked about keeping Solero, maybe Pale Ale Party, and potentially one more sort of on more consistently to try to give, we don't have any core beers, but at least that would provide some consistency, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to say an IPA is an IPA. That's way oversimplification of it. But if you tell me what beer you were here last time and liked, I can get you something very similar, Sure. So within all realms of reality, like we're still operating on, basic styles.
Sure.
And kind of expanding from that. But I don't know, as far as the future of beer, I really thought that COVID would, I thought we were in a bubble pre-COVID as far as the number of breweries, and not that I don't wish anything bad on any brewery or any business person. It's such a risk and everything to even go out on a limb and start your own business, and money, all of it. But I did a little part of me hoped that folks that were not focused on quality maybe got out of the way for a second, because I think that there's a lot of people who are entering this, like consumers who are just entering the scene now, and maybe they're not as educated and don't have the best palate, and that's totally fine. Everybody has to start somewhere and learn and grow. But I think there are some brewers that are going too gimmicky, too over the top, but with everything, the pendulum swings.
It's like the conversation with Eric about when did adjuncts jump the shark? Like at what point was it like, you're putting that in a beer? Like,
right.
I'm
When
done.
WeldWorks did one with spaghetti or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like,
oh man.
Okay. So I don't think we're there.
Was it your collab with WeldWorks that did the road snacks?
Yes. and like, I don't want to give any, I don't know that this is like proprietary.
It's not
thing.
spaghetti.
We did say it was not spaghetti. I mean,
Right.
the idea was a road trip. So the boil was as long as it would take to drive between us and WeldWorks, which is like 10 hours, 40
that's cool.
minutes.
Yeah.
So the boil was 10 hours and 40 minutes. That was like
That's
the
exhausting.
longest day at work. And then we had, we took adjuncts that you could find at the gas station. So it was like oatmeal cream pies, Hershey bars, coffee. Like, I don't even think it was bad coffee. I think we both sent coffee from
Good coffee.
from
Right,
roasters that we liked. Yeah, we sent them double shot.
Right. Nice.
And
Shout out Andrew Jolly.
boop. And then we did say like hot Cheetos dust. It was not hot Cheetos dust.
Okay,
they were
thank you.
ancho chilies,
All right.
That
That makes me
like,
feel better.
All right.
Yeah, so nothing too crazy. I mean, I
Fair.
think we're still firmly based in reality. But I don't know. I would say for every time, somebody wants the most bitter beer, as was on trend a few years ago, now we're getting back to a more normalized West Coast style, which is like what Perpetual Bliss is. Or
What a great segue. Pass a couple of
There
those
you
over
go.
here. Yeah.
Do you mind?
no, please.
We'll drink them side by side.
Right on.
So
there you go.
So is there a curve you feel like you have to stay ahead of as a brewery? Or is it just stay in your lane?
I sort of feel like, people should do what they specialize in. I don't know that I want, a more malt driven brand like Civil Life doing, Hazy Boys or something. I think, not that they couldn't do it, of course, but I feel like your consumer sort of dictates what you're going to have. We, I think, are fortunate to do fun things like our Boom Boom series, but also like good classic styles too. So I'd like to check the box for both consumers. We can do some wacky stuff, but also like at the end of the day, as long as we're still making good beer, I don't mind to do both.
And that's fair.
Yeah. And on that, I think that what you just said is truly what I'm feeling is where the craft beer industry is demanding is making good beer.
Right.
And, I don't think that, we did have that funny conversation with Eric about adjuncts and where it went too far. I mean, I think every single craft brewer at one point has put something in a beer that he or she was just a little bit embarrassed about, and myself included. But I think it goes down to where the products are going to live, is you have to make a good base beer first before you start meddling with it. And so I think that that's going to be the expectation. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I've always felt like Tulsa in the craft beer world is about a decade behind in where outside states like Colorado, Washington, Maine, even Illinois, and
we're not making any electric green beers like Yuppa is up in New York.
Sure,
either, like no one's doing that.
Yeah, well, what I mean by that is like we still deal with a day-to-day education of people coming in that have never experienced craft beer before. And so...
Well, and the laws, too, are probably a decade behind.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Up until recently, but we're still even behind in some areas.
And not even just in the beverage world. Like
you couldn't get a tattoo
gambling,
until 20 years ago or something? That's crazy.
Oh, we had dry counties.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, when I grew up in Dallas, there was what were they called? Oh, I knew the name until just now it escaped me. But there were cards that you had to sign up for and show them when you ordered a drink at a restaurant. Like you had to have your. Oh, I wish I could remember what it was called.
Like a personal beverage license, like
almost,
something that allowed you personally to consume alcohol.
Like they could not serve me a drink if I didn't have
that card.
My card. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like a medical card. That's crazy.
It's very similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what you said, and maybe it was like a light bulb went off because I think it's our generation thing too, and it's not just in the brewery beer world. I think a lot of our generation demand high quality in everything, in food, in tactile like products that they buy, and what they choose to spend their money in when it comes to drinks and cocktails. Like I think that's, and not to talk shit on older generations, but I feel like that's going to be kind of the calling card of our generation is a higher expectation of quality across the board in products that we buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
or maybe it's just me. But,
no. I think that you're right on. Yeah. I think that's spot on. It'll be really interesting with the generation after us. I was at CBC in Denver a couple of months ago, and all of the research is actually showing that the generation after us is it generation
Z?
Are they Z?
Z?
I think they're Z.
Generation Z.
Yeah.
They're a lot less in tune with local. Which is going to be really interesting to navigate all of that because they're so on their phones. So
that's a great point.
All of that, so they can get anything from anywhere.
The world is digital for them.
Yeah. Right. So the digital world is bringing things that aren't local to them in a way that is kind of proportionally shifting what they think is local.
Right.
Which is really weird.
I just had an epiphany, and you guys can fight over who we make this for. But to get ahead of the curve, one of you is getting the first metaverse brewery.
That
Grassfire will make for you.
There you go.
There we go.
In our virtual production animation department
cool.
over there.
Very cool.
Yeah. So one of you will have a meta brewery. We'll you can fight over who, but that's the curve that we have to
Austin,
get in
I
front
feel
of.
like that's all you, man.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll have to talk Lisa into it. She'll be
She
like,
can
"What's it,
design
madam?"
some stuff.
I'm still having to
Yeah.
talk her into what an NFT is, so we're still
know.
having that conversation too.
Yeah, she needs to sell that stuff.
I agree. She has the artwork. Before you ask a question, I smell peaches.
Yeah.
This is my favorite IPA you make, by the way.
Oh, thank you. No fruit in the beer,
No?
actually.
So it's just the hop that gives that
but
aroma?
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember what hops are in this?
You know,
That's okay if you don't.
I feel like Mosaic is one of them, but now I'm pretty embarrassed.
They're
I
good.
was like nervous. I was thinking, how do I prepare for this? And I was thinking, do I look up the hops on Sucks? And it's like, no one cares. No one cares. And then, we just released, I think we have 7 IPAs on the board right now.
Yeah.
I want to see this. I was over the hazy craze, and this is just beautiful to me.
And I like it because
Yeah.
there's some bitterness at the end. The ABV is a little lower, I mean, it's 6.5. It's not, it's not crazy. But we make a lot of, or our double IPAs sell best, so 8 and above, or 7, 8 and above. And this one I like because you can have a few, and it's just really nice, easy drinking. There's some fruit notes, but it's not fruity. And it's just like this Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, like just really sort of classic, easy drinking, has a bit of a bite at the end, but not, very food friendly. I mean, yeah, this is my jam.
So I said this when
yeah.
Eric was in. He brought Sierra Nevada Celebration, which
Yes.
I have in my fridge. And I said between that and that's my favorite seasonal release.
Right.
And to me, and we talked about it, there's never a bad time to drink an IPA, but for some reason, in my mind at least, on the beer calendar, this time of year is darker. It goes from Oktoberfest and Marzens to stouts and whatnot. And to have a fresh hop IPA be the seasonal release from a brewery like Sierra Nevada in October is just awesome to me.
Yeah.
I love it.
I absolutely love it. But that's also, as far as year-round beer, Sierra Nevada Pale is just...
You can't go wrong.
It's so hard
No,
to
you
beat.
can't.
Yeah.
So my last question is, I want to know, because I've asked this question to myself a lot, but I want to know, what do you think that the craft beer or the craft breweries in Tulsa can do to influence us to get to the next level of where the craft beer industry is going and be better for our community?
Yeah, so I think sort of twofold. On the customer end, I think we need some bigger, better organized, and well-executed events on a large scale with multi-brewery events. I recently was appointed to the board of CBA.
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
thank
congratulations,
you.
by the way.
The Craft Brewers Association of Oklahoma.
She's our treasurer.
Is what that stands for.
That's right.
Yep.
And hopefully seeing not just the Tulsa, but the Oklahoma beer scene from a different perspective will sort of help with that. I have a lot of event experience, not just from Solera, but prior. And I think that, like, from the consumer side, seeing those types of events and having, being able to try multiple beers in one setting from multiple breweries, I think will go a long way as far as that's concerned. I do wish there was more community amongst craft brewers in Tulsa. And not even just Tulsa, I guess Oklahoma breweries in general, but we in St. Louis had a lot of multi-brewery staff sort of potlucks, or second shift would host things on the holidays every year that certainly there were so many transplants to St. Louis, folks that didn't have families or places to celebrate. They were always very kind in opening their doors to everybody. And I think likely because of COVID, I personally have not had the chance to meet a lot of the folks within the industry. It's funny because we sort of are competitors, I guess, in a way. Like, we're all sort of fighting for our own piece of the pie of market share. But at the same time, I think craft brewing is especially unique because there is much more of a sense of community amongst within the industry as opposed to any other industry that's like much more cutthroat. I feel like people are always down to recipe share, share ideas, specifically as far as production goes, like dry hopping schedules or whatever it happens to be, specific suppliers with certain ingredients and adjuncts. But also just like, oh man, we're really in a pinch. And if we could just get some Pilsner malt, that would be so helpful, like right now. So I think that's sort of twofold, like having more community amongst brewers in Tulsa and then having better events where Tulsa residents can see community or also just like see the landscape of what the Tulsa beer scene really is. Not just Tulsa, I mean, Oklahoma. There's a lot of variety.
What do you think? What do you think is either preventing us from creating that community? Because other than COVID, because I think COVID trained us to not have friends.
That's really a big other thing.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Because you weren't necessarily allowed to be around people there for a moment. But how do we break away from that and create that community again? Because, from an outsider, that's a really interesting perspective. Hearing that, especially for me, because I don't feel that, but it definitely could be happening.
Right.
Especially now that you're bringing it to light, because, I feel like I could reach out to Chase or Matt or Eric for a pinch of Pilsner, here and there.
Oh, for sure. And I'm more speaking beyond our block.
Right.
Really,
right.
Really. Definitely my world is caught up within this block and a half.
Yeah. By the way, if all the other breweries are listening in, reach out. If you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
How do we move beyond that? Boy, I don't know. I certainly think like vaccines, boosters, all of those will help people feel comfortable being social again. And I certainly hope that. I'm such a social person, and the pandemic was a real tough time, but I big credit to my staff and the owners, just of being super kind and super helpful, during the whole pandemic. I ended up having sort of a freak medical issue.
I was going to ask, how are you? Are you everything good? Are you?
I mean, well,
you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to.
No. Just very, very, very briefly for the listeners. I had this some vision issues, had this crazy brain tumor, and was operated on. Oh, today is 1 year, 1 day.
No kidding.
After the operation.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
it's mostly gone,
so
that's good.
That.
And the vision issues have not gotten worse, so that's good.
Yeah.
They didn't. Nothing got better. But anyways, I was so new to Tulsa. I didn't know anybody, and really our staff and other breweries, their staff. You and Lisa were super kind. I mean, the Marshall folks were super kind. Everybody was amazing. I think that's very specific to craft beer. I mean, not that people are not generous everywhere,
sure.
but I think that was super wonderful. And but like I said, I personally have not had a ton of time outside of that or to really see. So I'm hopeful for the future. Like I said, with vaccines, with boosters, that folks will start to feel more comfortable again. We can start to have more public events. And, maybe we have a big block party blowout or something. And those kinds of things, I think, are definitely possible. It's just we haven't had a moment really to do or organize or think about anything like that. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
I'm for sure hopeful.
Good. Yeah. So I have my last question. It's a whale of a question, but we do have 2 beers left. We have the Pale and we have the Huntman IPA.
Right.
Oh, yes.
So how do we want to do this? Talk about Huntman.
Okay.
And we'll take a sip of Huntman.
And it's called Huntman.
Huntman. Not Huntman. Huntman.
Huntman. And for all of you listeners out there that accidentally call it Huntsman, that's fair.
Is it? There's no S. Why is that fair?
I mean, in my own brain, I definitely said Huntsman.
Yeah.
But I also can't see that well. So
sure, but I mean,
you get a pass on that.
You've got a pass.
Yeah.
Well, Huntsman is an actual word.
You just said an S too.
I said Huntsman
Oh, okay.
is an
On
actual
purpose.
word.
Okay, yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Wait.
Huntman, the name of the beer is not a word, it's a nickname.
Oh.
It's a nickname of my cousin, and when he would do something stupid in college, they'd go, a baby Huntman, because his name's Hunter.
Gotcha.
So,
I see.
Huntman.
yeah,
So it's not Huntman, it's Huntman.
Huntman. But yeah, so this is sadly probably the last time we're canning this beer.
Really?
Yep.
Why is that?
Because of the supply chain. Things are getting just too out of control, and this is too expensive of a beer for us to actually produce for distribution. And so we're having to take it out and replace it. We've got a wonderful Trail Magic Hazy IPA that's actually, interestingly, a lot less expensive to make than this beer specifically. And it's because of the hops within the whirlpool that make it a little bit more expensive. And so, yeah, but the funny thing is this batch, for its send-off, is definitely our most favorite batch to ever come out of the brewery. So, yeah.
What are the hops in it?
The hops in it are Citra and Calypso.
Oh.
Which a
Calypso.
marriage between American and Germany hops. Wonderful. I love Calypso so much, and I'm gonna be really sad to see it go because it's a fun hop.
So are you going to stop making it as far as it won't be in
not
the
a
tap
draft
room?
No. We'll make it in for the tap room every once in a while.
Okay.
But
Hey, it's a tap room only, exclusive.
There you
we go.
After this round.
Yeah. Get into a little bit of the Solera game.
There you go. Fresh drop.
Are you ready for the last question?
Yes.
I am.
What are you most proud of, and what's been the biggest hurdle being a female in a predominantly male-dominated profession?
I
I told you it was a big one.
Dang. Well, I'm glad we've had all of these
Right,
drops so I
right.
can really focus. Biggest, what I'm most proud of, and the
Biggest
biggest
hurdle.
setback,
Yeah.
hurdle.
You can take that in any order.
Boy, I'll start with hurdle.
Okay.
I think, man, I don't want to be cynical, and I'm, certainly not trying to put a negative spin on any of this.
Sure.
I think it's certainly been difficult to be a woman in craft beer. I think the industry's come a long way, but we're still, we're still dealing with it. I haven't had any of the really, really horrible experiences that a lot of women have, so I guess thank goodness for that. But like daily condescension, I guess, condescension. Mainly from customers, but even just a very good example was I've been very fortunate to get to travel all over the place for beer, and that's awesome. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the job. But like even in New York, went to a women's panel, and one of the presenters, one of the women, just assumed that I was Matt's wife first before even letting me introduce myself to say like, hey, I work for Solera.
Yeah.
And it's sort of not a wrong assumption, but it's sort of like I was saying before, I think front of house has really been sadly left out of the conversation of a lot of it. And it's the most direct, experience where you'll get a lot of, well, sweetheart, what do you like to drink? And it's like, well, do we just like the same styles? I mean, what, we just magically enjoy the same styles of beer? Yeah. I mean, okay.
Whoa.
So I don't know. I think just the initial assumption that either because I'm not in production, I don't know anything, or that front of house work is not valuable or is seen as like lesser than. I guess. So that's sort of what makes me sad as a woman in the industry.
Do you think that's prevalent regardless of gender?
No.
Okay.
The front of house part of it. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say if I was a female brewer, I would instantly have much more credo, and I feel for them too, because I think, they're still sort of seen as less than, even though they're in production. But like, being a woman in the front of house, well, being in the front of house and being a woman is like, oh, okay, she's a bartender. I think is what a lot of people just immediately assume, if they assume anything other than I must be dating whoever I'm standing next to.
Right.
So I would say maybe that's the biggest hurdle as far as biggest celebration. I think I'm a really hard worker, and I dedicate a lot of my time, and I'm really passionate about what I do. I feel like I've been very fortunate to work for two really amazing breweries and that are both very quality focused and care about their staff and want the best for people, which is ultimately like my biggest focus. I want the best for my staff and all of the people that I manage. So that's what I'm always looking to. So making small quality of life improvements, if that's like, hey, you need 2 days off to make your week work, great, let's do that. Or Solero recently offered like a 3% match on a simple IRA to all staff, regardless
That's awesome.
regardless of level or hourly, salary. So like those kinds of things I want to always be pushing for. I think hopefully offering a nice place to work and an open door for them to approach me with any issues that they're having. I mean, I would say that's probably my biggest win.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we say goodbye, let's pop open that and let's talk about what makes Sierra Nevada Pale Ale the best pale ale in the world.
There you go.
Hey, I didn't make a pale ale for a long time.
Because you were afraid of Sierra Nevada?
No, not because I was afraid.
I'm kidding.
Not because I was afraid. I wouldn't have opened up a brewery if I was afraid.
Not afraid of. Not in that way. I meant more of like being able to make one to the quality of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Oh no,
is what I meant.
I wasn't afraid of that. I was. I literally told people like, well, I mean, I can make a similar quality beer, but why would I try?
It already exists.
It
right?
already exists.
Right.
That's more.
Don't fight it.
Don't fight it.
Just
Just lean into it. You can go buy it.
I phrased it wrong. That's what I meant. Because that exists, it kept you from like, why would I do that? I'll just drink a bottle.
There you go.
Yeah.
Classic. Mm-hmm. Oh, my word. I love Sierra.
What is it about this beer, though? From two people in the brewery world, like, why is this so fucking good?
It's because of the quality of the ingredients that they actually use and the way that they produce it.
It's so good.
And of course, with any bigger brewery, you have more equipment, more people, more labs. I mean,
That's fair.
You're able to do like really, really, and their brew houses are automated in a way that like we don't have
It's
available
a different
to us.
game when you're
for
brewing
sure.
at that level.
And I would say like I understand why a lot of folks are upset or feel bummed out when whatever brewery that they really love ends up getting bought out by someone bigger. But I think they can bring a lot to the table. I know that I have friends who work for New Belgium. They were a little bit sad, but also were they going to get an X amount of check and, stock in the company and whatever before? No, And if that bigger brewery can bring automation and consistency to what is an art form, I mean, ultimately, but like when you're a big national distributing brewery like this, you have to be very consistent in the same way, of course. So, I think it's like, that when you buy a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, it's going to be fucking awesome every time.
Literally one of the most...
Airtime.
One of the most awe-inspiring moments is when I was living in Denver, we went to Golden, we did a tour of the Coors factory, and you talked about automation. Being in that room where it looked like our control room, where it was just all these panels of knobs and buttons, and I was like, there was someone in there working, I was like, I don't want to interrupt you, but how do you... Oh my God! Like there's so many knobs and like things. What is happening?
A lot of
It's
training.
like NASA.
And he was like, honestly, he was like, well, this panel controls all of those, like all that. You see that big silver out there? Like all 6 of those in that area. That's this board. This board is, and I was like, holy fuck! Like Jesus! Like rocket science and brewing. Like it was unreal.
We have glycol units to chill our tanks. They actually have a lake.
Yeah.
Wow.
They have a lake.
Yeah. It's a different. I mean, it's brewing is you're all in the same world, but it's like different.
Well,
it's
so
just different.
And with
Yeah.
with scale comes, differences.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why it's like, Chase Sold Prairie. They're within craft beer, they're very big as far as quantity of beer. I don't know if they're like annual production's 20,000 barrels or what, but
It's close.
But we're about 1,500 to 2,000 barrels a year.
Yeah.
Obviously much smaller. And that affords us the luxury of, putting 200 pounds of coconut into whiskey barrels. They can't do that. And that's not a knock to them. It's just, it's not
feasible.
it doesn't
Right.
make sense
Right.
fiscally, but like we're able to do that. We're able to direct sell. We're not trying to deal with a distributor who's taking a large percentage of your money. And it's just different, right? So it's like one's not bad or good, but like their consistency and quality is just always going to be awesome because they have the scale and they're able to.
Can I ask you one prairie question?
Maybe.
Well, you might not.
I mean, you can ask me. I don't know.
You might not know the answer,
Yeah.
but I feel like they're now a 90-10 split between just sours and stouts. That's really like
Stouts and 10% sours?
no, the other way. I feel like I see like 90% of the beers I see on the shelves from Prairie are some form of a sour. And then this time of year, you start to see some stouts. But I feel like everything else has been lost.
Boy,
And that's not talking shit on them. It's just trying to
no.
figure out what's
I'll
happening.
say that I'm not so. I mean, going to the liquor store today to buy this beer for this podcast. It's maybe the first time I've been in a liquor store in maybe 6 months. I'm just not someone who goes regularly.
Yeah.
I don't, and that's likely bad. I mean, I went in and I tasted all of our beer and I was like, okay, looks good. Let's move on. Now, what am I here for? And, but I mean, otherwise in general, I just don't really go and shop in the market. I think
Have you noticed that then?
I'm in the same boat as Katie.
Okay, so
It's like when you have beer at your disposal, it's
Fair.
like, why?
Fair.
Right?
And not just our own beer, but I've got your beer. And
Marshall's
Yeah.
beer. Yeah.
All within our block.
So
Right.
that's homework over the next couple of weeks. Just if you're driving home and you pass a liquor store, stop and go in, because I honestly feel like it's rainbow sherbet sour, and then it's like, oh, another fruited sour. Like here's a stout, fruited sour, and I'm like, damn, is that like what happened to an IPA or
Are they mostly kettle sours?
That's what I
think
feel
so,
like.
right?
That's what I feel like. Yeah.
I mean,
think so.
rainbow sherbet is
Right.
certainly.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. It was just a passing thought.
Right.
And I didn't know if any of you had noticed
I
that.
don't. I don't.
Okay, so we
know.
have homework now for this podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Katie, when
Very
can
good.
people see you in the tap room? What's your hours?
Oh, well.
Or maybe
I'm
not
also-
yours. What are
I'm-
tap room hours?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
So the tap room is open Monday through Thursday, 4 to 9, Friday and Saturday, noon to 10, and Sunday, noon to 6.
You can give your hours when you're going to be there
Yeah,
if you know, too.
I keep
but-
very inconsistent hours, but I'm usually like early morning and almost always, even though I'm the taproom manager, almost always gone by the time the taproom opens to the public. But we also have a burger concept called Bubs.
Oh, it's so
and
good. Yeah.
They're so good, serving up smash burgers. They're Tuesday through Saturday, 4 to 8 during the week, and noon to 6 on Saturdays.
You have any pop-ups coming up?
Yeah, Biz Chicks are here
Oh, that's
this
right.
Sunday.
Oh, they're so
I don't
good.
know if this
Speaking
will
of
come out
vintage.
before that, but yeah, Biz
Yeah.
Chicks are here this Sunday. Those are the ladies of vintage. That's the only one we have on the books for now.
Okay.
Once we expanded Bub's hours, they sort of stopped.
Well, now you just gave me work. I have to get this
joking.
out before Sunday
Yeah.
because we got to give the Biz Chicks their
They're
due.
little-
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, pet.
have you had that stuff yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh, dude.
They're awesome.
You have no excuse because you're right next door. It's
11 a.m.
Yeah.
11 a.m. on Sunday.
Well, that's why I haven't had them. Because
Right.
I don't go to the brewery on Sunday.
Well, but this Sunday.
I'm
Just
coming.
this
I'm coming back at halftime of Bedlam so that I can eat breakfast.
And we'll have it on the television.
Fair.
Of course.
There we go.
Yes.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming out.
Cheers
Thanks
to
for
you.
having me.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your new position on the.
Thank you.
As the treasurer.
Appreciate
treasurer.
it. I feel like that's bad luck. I think you do that one.
Yeah.
Here
What are
we
you
go.
doing?
There you go.
There we
You
go.
got to drink. You got to drink more bourbon.
Cheers.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after the break.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
And that was Katie Godoy, who wears multiple hats at American Solera. She's in charge of events, in charge of front of house, taproom, in charge of distribution. Some of the
Is there a
distribution
job
stuff.
that she doesn't
Honestly,
do there?
like she's just a badass.
She is a badass.
I mean, we'll just call it what it is. Fun conversation. And look, the gauntlet has been laid. It has been brought in for everyone else when it comes to bringing beer to this
That's right.
podcast. Like,
What did she bring?
She brought
five different beers.
She brought Perpetual Bliss. She brought Solero. She brought
Sucks.
Lagunitas Sucks. She brought Busch, and she brought Pale
Ale.
I mean, come on.
That's a lineup.
It's a lineup.
That was awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
She took her homework to heart.
She did. And we have homework. You guys have homework.
That's right.
After this podcast, which you'll hear about towards the end. But it was really good conversation. It was really good to have just, different perspective. Someone that didn't grow up in Oklahoma, isn't from Tulsa. It was just a kind of eye-opening talk.
And speak a little bit of light into, our community from a completely different perspective from who we've talked to. And man, she is a badass. She is a smart, talented, and driven individual.
Very driven.
Yeah.
Very driven.
Really cool.
So to pull back the curtain a little bit, we recorded this prior to Thanksgiving. I'm going to try to get it up and on the platforms by Black Friday, which means we can tell you happy Thanksgiving, and also we hope you had a great Thanksgiving. So
right on. Yeah.
both at the same time.
We hope that you
works.
enjoy your time with family.
Yes.
And hopefully you're drinking something really great like Solero.
Speak of the devil
with your family and your turkey.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Have a wonderful holiday.
You too. Let's do this again soon.
Right on.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
See you guys then.
Cheers.